Welcome to Sakshi TV Special Immigration Show with lawyer Mr. Srinivas Kaveti from law firm Kaveti Law Firm. Please note that Sakshi TV now has four immigration shows every week on Tuesdays with Mr. Kaveti, on Wednesdays with Ms. Prashanti Reddy in English, and on Thursdays with Mr. Chand Parvatneni, and on Fridays with Banu Inindra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you are an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call us at 866-725-7441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on this show is not a legal advice and for general informational purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for the use of information. If you need any specific legal advice, you can definitely contact the attorney directly. Mr. Kaveti, his law firm, Kaveti Law Firm, doesn't need any more introduction. But if you need any consultation, you can definitely visit their website. His law firm is headquartered in New York City, but they have offices through Asia, Europe, North America, and Australia. So without any further delay, let's welcome Mr. Kaveti. Hello, Kaveti Garu. How are you? I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, hello, Shivani. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, it's always wonderful having you on our show. And Mr. Kaveti, we just got to know that Mr. Joe Biden has agreed to sign an act, which is Respectful Marriage Act. So, can you explain a little about what exactly is this?
Today is actually a victory for a lot of same-sex couples and people who interracial marriages. Joe Biden has signed a law. It's a federal law today. In the afternoon, he signed, and that has become a federal law all over the country. Before the Supreme Court of America said it was legal to have same-sex marriages, but the marriage is actually a state subject in America. That means 50 states had their own 50 different laws, and there were some states that were not recognizing it. Now, they have signed it a law on now. That means all over the country, it's a law now. It's a federal law. That means same-sex people can get married. They can get marriage licenses in all over the country. And they can also sponsor their spouses for green cards. And interracial and same-sex marriages became lawful. That's called Respect of Marriage Act. Joe Biden had just signed it in the afternoon today. So that's a
Yes.
great news for the whole world, actually. So that means the legislature also recognized, because in the past there were some, religions, like if you see Muslim religion, there are certain religions, they were not recognizing it. They were saying it's immoral, it's unlawful. And even some Catholic churches, they were said no. But now it's a law all over the land of, all over America, it's lawful.
Yes.
That's what it is.
So I think that's what brings up to our topic today also, Mr. Kaveti. We will be discussing about marriages, divorces, especially divorces and their settlements and legal issues in USA. So first of all, Mr. Kaveti, let's ask. I'll ask you like the basic question, which is, what are the requirements of getting married in America, especially for Indians?
Well, the law says it's not for the Indians or anybody. The marriage, the definition of marriage, they have to be major, of course. And again, some states stated that you could be 18 years above, and some states 19 years. Again, as I said to you, marriage is a state subject. So, there should be sound mind, and they should be over 18 years of age. And if they're minors, then the parents have to give a consent, and they should be in a sound mind. They should be more than age of 18. It doesn't matter, because it's like India. We have Muslim law, we have Hindu law, we have Christian law, and we have Parsis, and we have Special Marriage Act. If people from Islamic people or Hindu people are getting married, there's nothing like that in US. You could basically, it's a uniform standard. Equality of law. It's the same thing for everybody. So if you're a citizen of America, if you're a resident of that particular state, you have to follow the state law. Before getting married, the first and foremost thing is you have to go and apply for a license in America. I mean, there's nothing like that in India. You don't have to go and apply for a license in India. But here you have to go to the city hall, apply for a license, and it takes 24 hours to get a license. Then you can go back and get married. You should have at least two witnesses to witness your wedding. So after 48 hours, you can get marriage certificate. They basically would ask you whether have you been married before or have you been a widower. Basically they want to see have you been married before or not. If you've been married before, then they just want to see your divorce decree from the earlier marriages. And they will see that and they want to see your ID, whether you are more than 18 years of age. You could just even have a passport. A lot of time there's a misnomer saying that, oh, you're illegal in the country, you can't marry. There's nothing like that. You just have to have an ID to go walk into a city hall office, that's called municipality, and get married. And there are marriage celebrants also. They also get you married.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, this is a common doubt. I'm pretty sure because there are different kinds of laws here in India. Like you have a Hindu law, you have a Muslim law, you have a Christian law, like you just mentioned. Like there also intercaste laws. So, do they have to get this registered in America if they move to America? What's the whole process like?
The requirements for getting married in America is, see, it's a very interesting question what you asked, because under the Hindu law, you just do the Saptapadi, Mangal Sutra and all of that. It's called customary marriage in India. That's recognized in India, even though you don't register it in India. But if you see Islamic law, Muslim law, the Maulvi comes and do a marriage, which is called, marriage ceremony. And in Christian, you go to a church and the pastor does it. But in US law, you'll have to register the marriage. If you go to a temple and get married, and if you don't register the marriage in the county, in the municipality, then that's not a recognized marriage. So that means to get a recognition of husband and wife in a marriage, to get a marriage certificate, it has to be registered with the municipality, which it's called city hall, municipality. That's not the case in India. So even if you don't register the marriage in India, it's recognized in India, because that's called customary marriages. But even if you go to an Arya Samaj, you get a certificate saying that your husband and wife married. They do Arya Samaj marriage in India, but in America, you have to register the marriage. If you do a customary marriage, if you don't register, that's not a valid marriage.
Yes. So, what are the cons, Mr. Kaveti, if they don't get registered, or what are some legal actions that the U.S. government can take if they are not properly registered?
Well, if the marriage is not registered in America, it's not a valid marriage, basically. You cannot be called as husband and wife. You could be called as living together. I mean, people, if you didn't get married, or even if you do a customary marriage, but if you live together, you'll be like a de facto guys, as living together relationship. It's you don't fall under the definition of marriage, and as a spouse, you would not, you would not have rights. Basically, spousal rights. So it's a key that you have to register the marriage in America.
Yes. Now, Mr. Kaveti, this happens a lot. A lot of people, even though they have their H-1B or their F-1, they come to India, they get married, and they get back, they go back to USA. Let's say if they got married in India and they went back, lived there, and they want to get a divorce in America, is that possible?
Yes, I mean, divorce laws are again different. It depends upon the first aspect is, as you asked a question that, people do meet in America on an F1 status in the schools, and, they also meet people at work on a H-1B when they're working as an IT programmers. I mean, they decide to get married, they go back to India and they get married. The first thing is when they go and get married, they have to register the marriage in India under the Indian registration. And there's a registry called the Registry of Births and Deaths. So you got to go back to the registration office, register your marriage, then you can come back. I mean, even if you're not approaching the consulate for an F2 visa or an H4 visa, you'll have to register the marriage and come back to US. Once you come back to US, you recognize, your marriage is recognized under the US law. The Constitution of US says it's called law of comity. That means the marriage registered in India is recognized by the US government. If it's called law of full faith and credit if you get married in another state. These are all doctrines in Constitution of US. Yes, of course, the question is again, under the family law, the jurisdiction lies where you're living. If you want to get divorced in America, let's say if you're living in California for more than 1 year, as husband and wife you're living, the California courts will have jurisdiction to file a divorce. Many times there's a misnomer. The lawyers in India and some people, they go through the online and blogs and they say, oh, you got married in India, marriage is registered in India, you'd have to file a divorce petition in India. The answer is no. The reason is you don't fall under the jurisdiction of Indian courts because you're not living in India, you're not a domiciliary of India, and under the Indian Income Tax Act, if you're living more than 180 days overseas, you come under the definition of NRI. That means wherever you live, you have to go and file a divorce there. So the American courts will have jurisdiction to file a divorce, even if you get married and registered the marriage in India.
Yes. Vice versa, Mr. Kaveti, my question is, if they get married in America, can they get divorced in India?
If they move back to India, if they're residents, the definition of residency means many times people do get married here because they meet on H1B or they meet as a college students, they get married and, for some many reasons, they move back to India, even though they married in America, registered the marriage in America, even though sometimes they have children, they move back. Yes, if they live in the residency, if they're living in Bangalore or Hyderabad or Delhi, wherever they live, they can apply for a divorce in that particular court jurisdiction. This is called, under the Civil Procedure Code, you have to have a personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction, and it's also called territorial jurisdiction. These are the terms which are used in Civil Procedure Court in India, and those courts will have jurisdiction to file your divorce. Yes.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, can you please explain about what are some rights of children who are born in America for people with H1 or H1Bs or F1? What are their rights there?
If the children are born in US, that's the first thing is because they become American citizens. And if you're living in America, this is a state subject again. Every state has its own laws. But the general idea is, the custody issues, who would have the custody, whether the father or mother. If you see the Indian perspective, the Hindu laws are different, Muslim laws are different, and Parsi laws and Sikhism. There are different laws in India for custody issues. There's nothing like that. Whoever, here, both the parents would have access and the custody. Whoever is making money. And the only criteria is you should not be an abusive parent. If you're an abusive parent, then the courts will not give custody or access in America. But, if you look at Indian perspective, it's a different rules and regulations. But in America, the children will have access towards both the parents. And both the parents will have an access and they would have a custody right. They would also have an access. Both the parents are equal under the US law.
Yes. Can you can you talk a little about the kids who are born in India and, their parents got married in USA and, maybe they also have a green card, maybe let's say that the parents have a green card. That children are born here in India, what are their rights and how is it different from children born in USA?
Interesting. It's a very complex question. Its answer is not very simple because the first thing what the courts will look at is whether the children are living in India or children are living in America. If the children are living in America, then the American laws would apply. If the children are living in India, many times parents they decide that the children should go to school in India, and sometimes the children would be with their grandparents. They want their children to be raised with the grandparents. Many situations are there like that. We do get a lot of calls. Then the Indian laws would apply. Even though if they are American citizens, because they are living in India. And again, they look at again whether they're raised as Hindus or whether they're raised as Muslims or Christians, depends upon that again. Even it goes back to in Hindu law, there are two types of schools called Dayabaga school and Mitakshara school. I don't want to go into that complex in India because northern part of India is governed by the Dayabaga school and the southern part of India is governed by the Mitakshara school of Hinduism. I don't want to go into that detail because it's going to be very complex in this small 30 minutes of interview. But, Hindu law, the law governing Hindu law is different, Christian law is different, and Islamic law is different. So let's not talk too much about Hindu law, but the law of that country applies. And if they're living in America, the law of America applies. And every state has its own, laws governing children in America. Because in America, you see 50 states have 50 different laws, family laws. So, depends upon each law of that particular state.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, let's get on to some legal matters. Let's talk about custody. You did explain a little about, what happens actually in USA. But can you talk, like, let's say that, they got married in USA and that, they got divorced. And what are the exact custody rules, even though their parents are not yet a green card holder? Or let's say that they're still on an F1 or a H1B, what happens to their children?
The custody, the first thing, most of the time you get phone calls, husband is an IT programmer, he's working, and mother is just an H4 and she's not financially independent. Many times women call our firm and they ask, can I get the custody of the children? The courts, what they look at it is, they want to see whether you have a financial ability to take care of the children because you have to pay the rent, you have to have the insurance, you have to have a car, you have to have some sort of a money to support the kids for the food, clothing, and all of the things. So the courts are looking whether you have a financial ability. That's number one. Number two, sometimes they will also see whether if you're an abusive parent. Sometimes husband might be earning money, but he's an abusive parent. He's a child neglect or a child abuse, things like that. The parents, the fathers would not get a custody. The mother might get it. So there are so many factors they will look into it. The judges will look into it, and age of the child and financial ability of the parties. And maybe sometimes children are, mentally ill, sometimes physical disabilities. There are so many factors they look into it before the courts you decide the custody issues.
Yeah.
It's just not a one thumb rule, you see.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, what about the kids who are born in USA and they have agreed, of course, naturally the citizens of USA. What happens if their parents want to move to India? Who gets the custody then?
Well, if that's many times this happens because when the husband and they had a fight and they have a divorce, and one of the parents they want to move to India, and sometimes the husband wants to keep the children, and sometimes the wife, many times they call us and they say, mothers they become emotional. They say, oh, we want to get the children, American children, out of America and take them back to India, because what happens once they get divorced, most of the time women's parents they say, hey, please come back to India, bring your children. We do get calls like that. The answer is the American courts want the American children to be raised in American land, not in a foreign land. The kids are American citizens. They're going to school in America. They have friends in America. They're raised in America. So they're American kids. So the American government and the American courts want them to be in America, not that they could go back and live in India, see? So most of the times, the parent who is decided to be in America would get a custody and full-time custody.
Yes. So, Mr. Kavitina, you've been in this, in this work for so long, and I'm pretty sure you've dealt with so many different cases, especially the marriage and custody cases. Are there any, is there any like a special case, or what is like the most common question that people come for help to you?
Well, most of the times, all these battered spouse and those who are not financially independent, those who are on H1s or H4s, especially women, and people, husbands are going through a green card processing. And because if they leave their husband, they might lose their green card. So they're taking all the, physical and mental abuse, and they at the verge of, breakdowns, and they want to take the children and go back, or they want to make sure whether they will get their green card if they leave their husbands. Such questions are very common. And, we also suggest, for battered spouse, there is a U visa, and they also can be independent. And H4 people also can get work permits if they're battered spouses. And they can also be independent, and they can also ask for custody of the children and property distribution and custody and full access. Such type of questions are more common. And it's just not a hard and fast rule answer which we can give. It depends upon many, many factors before we give advices. And the other thing is because our firm is in New York, so we can only advise New York clients. Other states we can't advise. Our firm cannot advise because our attorneys are all qualified in New York. Because it's a state subject, when they call us, we tell them to contact the local lawyers, whichever the state they are, because there are 50 states, have 50 different laws, family laws. And we only just give a general ideas. We can't give specific legal advices. So we ask them to contact competent lawyers in their particular state. Only for immigration, it's a federal law. Our firm, our attorneys are qualified, they can advise. But other than that, we do ask them to contact the local lawyers. And many times, if there are issues like Indian law and, US law, then we try to advise Indian law, what are the rights and liabilities they have. And, in terms of cross-country jurisdictional issues and in terms of properties in India, properties in America, equitable distribution of properties. And because in Indian law is something different for the property law, US law is different for the property division. It's a very complex area, I must tell you that. It's not that simple, Somebody who's qualified in multiple jurisdictions can only advise. And our lawyers, our firm has lawyers from different jurisdictions, like, people are admitted in Africa and US and England and US, Australia and US. Our firm has different lawyers with different law backgrounds. So, that's the reason we advise clients with multiple jurisdiction issues because our lawyers, we have, group of lawyers who work in different areas of law, So it's
Yes.
not that simple answer.
Yes. Mr. Kaveti, I know this is not completely related to a divorce, it's more into like the abuse and divorce. This is a very common issue. I think a lot of women, not just women, I think a lot of people go through it in USA where they get married to a US citizen or maybe a green card holder, and and that person is on a dependent visa and they're abused. How can they get a divorce if they want to get a divorce? This, like, as simple as it sounds, it's basically like how can a person on dependent visa get a divorce?
Wonderful question, Shivani. Many times we do get those calls because poor ladies, they're not working and they're dependent. There are many organizations in America, different states. They help these battered spouses, these dependent spouses who are not financially independent. Sometimes, they can contact the local courts, and local bar associations has some lawyers who do pro bono cases. And there are some women rights organizations, they do help these such women for filing divorces, and even for child custody. And sometimes there are some pro bono lawyers, those who also help them for getting work permits. And some lawyers will also help them to even file cases and request the court for even the attorney fees. Sometimes when the husbands are working, the lawyers, they do file applications with the court and request the court to award lawyers' fees. That means the wife is not financially independent. The courts to grant interim maintenance. That means before the case is decided. And sometimes they also award attorney fees, initially. That means if they can't afford, the courts do award such, judgments and awards, interim awards, so that the husband will be asked to pay the lawyer's fees of the wife. I mean, it's a beautiful system in this country. They can contact the local bar associations, local human rights and women rights organizations. They can do research online, and they can make few phone calls. And there are a lot of Indian organizations are also running, women rights organizations in US. They do help them. We do get such we do get such calls as well, because a lot of women, they call us and we tell them to contact local bar associations. And these are called law referral places. They can get referrals.
Yes. So, Mr. Kaveti, looks like the custody, divorce, and a lot of distribution of property. These are a very huge topics. But can you give us an overview of exactly what happens to the property distribution, especially for people who are getting divorced in America? Let's say they have huge properties down here in India. What happens to that?
So wonderful question you asked, Shivani, because many times these women, poor ladies who come to America on H4, and the husband is making money, he's buying a house. Many times, husband, they buy houses on their name during the marriage. And the woman, they think, oh, because husband is earning, he's bought the house on his name. If I get divorced, I might not have a right in that. But the law in America says if you get married, if you bought a property, either a house or a car or a land in India or anywhere on the earth, even stocks, during the marriage, even if the wife has not contributed for purchase of those property, they would have a right to get some portion of it. It's like equitable distribution. They do have a right to get some share in those properties. Many times, women from India, they come and they say, oh, my husband bought a property in India on his mother's name or his father's name or his name. I did not invest any money in it. Only my husband is earning on an H-1B. He bought the property. The property is on his name. Even if it is on his name, they have a right on this property. That concept is called it's a property law, joint ownership, and law by entirety. It's called it's a jurisprudence property law. It's called joint ownership you have in the property. Even though you've not contributed, even though you've not paid anything for purchase of the property, the wife do have a share when they get divorced, even if it is Indian property or American property. So women do have a right, even if the husband, if, for example, if the wife is earning and husband did not contribute, if the wife bought a property, husband would also have a right in that property. So that's a beautiful concept in America. It's called tenancy by entirety. This concept is unknown in India. Only we have joint ownership, and we don't have tenancy by entirety. That's an English concept, which is also in America. Tenancy by entirety. So
Yes,
women will have a right in that property, yes.
yes. And finally, Mr. Kaveti, is there anything that you want to say to the viewers, who are going through these problems, and how can your law firm help them?
Well, because we are located in New York, our firm can help definitely. We have qualified attorneys who practice family law. They can advise. And if they want to know anything about complex Indian issues, we can also help them. And they should, basically get information, do some basic research. And if they call us, we will be able to give them a basic information, but not legal advisors to different states. As I told you again and again, our firm is only qualified to practice in New York. So only we can, our law attorneys qualified in New York can only advise New York law. And other states, we can give a general idea, but not a specific legal advice. They should contact the local lawyers in different states. And if there's any lawyers from India, if they want to get in touch with us, or if any clients who are sitting in India, they can contact us. And any people who are sitting in America, if they want to know something about Indian law, they can contact us. We assist them in both jurisdictions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kaveti Garu. Thank you so much for joining onto our show. Thank you to the viewers for tuning in. You're watching Sakshi TV with me, Shivani Raj.